Week 14 of the fantasy football season. Here's a few defense DST units I would start this week. The first one, the Cleveland Browns. The Browns, obviously led by Myles Garrett. There's going to be some big weeks for them, and some weeks where they haven't done much. But this week, a great matchup versus the Titans. I give up the third most fantasy points to DSTs on the season. So the last few weeks for this Cleveland defense, Week 10 at the Jets, 27 points allowed, 3 sacks and interception. Week 11 versus Baltimore, big game, 23 points allowed, 5 sacks, 2 INTs, a fumble recovery touchdown. Week 12 at Vegas, 10 points allowed, 10 sacks, a fumble recovery. In Week 13, like I said, it was a tough one for them versus the Niners. 26 points allowed and a sack. But this week, like I said, Tennessee coming in, one of the worst teams in the league with the rookie Cam Ward. And I think Myles Garrett wouldn't be surprising if he got 2 or 3 sacks in this ball game. No one could stop Garrett this season. He's getting to the quarterback. And this Brown team overall, this is a great defense. So this week with a great matchup versus one of the worst teams in the league, the Browns an easy start. The next start, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tampa Bay, I know their defense isn't any good for the most part this season, but this week I'm going off a matchup, and it's a great matchup versus the New Orleans Saints coming in. And going back to Week 8 at the Saints, 3 points allowed, 5 sacks, 2 interceptions, 2 fumble recoveries, and 1 for a touchdown. So they got to Tyler Shuck early and often in that game. They created turnovers, and it was a monster game, obviously, for Tampa Bay that week. So this week is a streaming option. They're a great option. The last few weeks for this Bucs defense, Week 11 at Buffalo, 44 points allowed, 2 interceptions, a fumble recovery in that one, got the doors blown off. Week 12 at the Rams, 28 points allowed, a sack. And Week 13, a pretty decent game versus the Cardinals, 17 points allowed, 2 sacks, an interception, and a fumble recovery. So like I said, New Orleans, they turn the football over. Shuck takes sacks, and they do give up the 6th most fantasy points to DSTs on the season. So Tampa Bay, to me, this week is a good streaming option start. The next DST, the Washington Commanders. I thought the Commanders versus the Broncos, I know they still gave up 27 points in that game, but they made them earn all their points in that ball game, obviously, on Sunday Night Football. So Commanders, a great matchup here at the Minnesota Vikings. We'll see if it's J.J. McCarthy back in the lineup or Max Brosnan, but to be honest, it just doesn't matter. Both these quarterbacks aren't any good, and I think this Commander defense could take advantage of that. And also an indoor game, defense a little faster on the fast track as well. The last few weeks for this defense, Week 10 versus Detroit, they got blown out, 44 points allowed, a block kick. Week 11 at the Dolphins, 16 points allowed, 3 sacks. And Week 13, like I said, versus Denver, they made them earn it, no doubt about it, 27 points allowed, a sack and interception. But this week is a streaming option at the Vikings. Like I said, worst quarterback play arguably in all the NFL this season between McCarthy, Brosmer, and Carson Wentz. They're definitely a DST I will put in the lineup this week. Like I said, they could get to the quarterback a little, create a couple turnovers, and this Viking offense has been horrible pretty much all season long. The next DST is the Seattle Seahawks. Seattle, one of the better defenses in the league, and they're coming off a monster ball game where they just made Max Brosnan make Desmond Ridder look like a good quarterback. That's how bad they teed off on him and created turnovers and opportunities. So the last few weeks, their defense is going out there and putting up some points. Week 10 versus Arizona, 22 points allowed, 5 sacks, 2 fumble recoveries, 2 touchdowns, both by DeMarcus Lawrence in that game. Week 11 at the Rams, 21 points allowed, a fumble recovery. Week 12 at Tennessee, 24 points allowed, 4 sacks. And Week 13, like I said, they teed off with the shutout in that one versus Minnesota. 4 sacks, 4 interceptions, and a fumble recovery touchdown. So Leonard Williams, DeMarcus Lawrence really anchoring this defense for the Seattle Seahawks team. And this week it's a great matchup at the Atlanta Falcons, where Kirk Cousins, obviously, I think his better days are behind him. He's taken big hits. He's always been a gunslinger and a quarterback that turns the football over. And this week indoors, I think this defense will play a little faster, and it could be a long day for Cousins in that offense. To Seattle, definitely a DST to start this week. In the final defense I would start is the Kansas City Chiefs. So the Chiefs back home after a tough loss at Dallas on Thanksgiving Day, where it was an up and down game, up and down the field, where the Cowboys offense, they couldn't stop. But this week, an easier matchup versus a mediocre to poor offense of the Houston Texans, even though the Texans, they're on fire and winning a lot of games, even though that's got to do a lot with one of the best defenses in the league they have, Houston. So the last few weeks for Kansas City's DST, they haven't been good, obviously. Been tougher matchups versus the Colts. And then, like I said, the Cowboys in last week's game. Week 11 at Denver, 22 points allowed, 2 sacks. Week 12 versus Indianapolis, in that game, 20 points allowed. And Week 13 at Dallas, 31 points allowed, an interception. So like I said, Houston Texans are coming in. Offense isn't all that great. Besides Nico Collins, Dalton Schultz, inconsistencies all around. I know Jaden Higgins the last few weeks, he's starting to come around a little bit for this Houston Texan team. But I think with their backs against the wall, obviously for this Kansas City team, 6-6 in a must-win type of environment with the Texans ahead of them in the standings, I think this defense goes out there, makes plays, and put up some numbers. That's a few defense DST units I would start for Week 14 of the fantasy football season.